I've got Holly on the phone. She's another musician that reached out about the current interview session. So I'm going to go ahead and give her the chance to introduce herself.
Yeah, I'm Holly Cordero. I'm a bassist and multi-instrumentalist in the Central Florida area. Currently working with a jazz quartet and running my own music nonprofit, as well as teaching full-time 6th through 12th grade in a public school.
Awesome. That's very cool. Well, we will definitely talk about all of that. But for the moment, let's kind of go back in time a little bit. Tell me about when you kind of first connected with music. What about it kind of really spoke to you and made you want to participate in it?
I started playing music when I was 5. I started on piano because we had a piano in my house, and my dad played piano like as a hobby. And I thought it sounded nice and I wanted to learn it. I was 5. That was about as deep as my thought went. And then as I got older, around 9, I stopped playing music. And then I picked it back up when I was 14. And I was, really into rock music at the time. I wanted to play guitar, but I didn't have a guitar at home to play. I ended up learning how to play upright bass because my school started in an orchestra. And then after that, I started playing guitar. And then I just learned to love the bass. I got into music school on bass, and after that, went to grad school and started writing music and playing out and all that good stuff.
Okay, so let's kind of back up there a little bit. You mentioned that you were interested in piano just because your dad was playing it and you liked the kind of timbre of it and the sound of it. What do you think it was after that period from 9 to 14 that kind of made you want to re-engage with music?
I mean, that's a really important part of growth in any human being, for that preteen teen stage where you're going through like a lot of changes just in your personality and your brain structure, if we get sciencey. So I think it was a lot of like trying to reflect back on things that I enjoyed and that I could delve into more emotionally and express myself with. So I was into sports when I was in middle school, and that kind of took over. So then I went back to music because I felt like I wasn't getting what I wanted out of sports in terms of being artistic and being creative. I was really into art and drawing and stuff like that. And going into sports just felt like, out of pocket, so to speak.
Sure.
So music brought me back to that so I could be more free in my expression.
Okay, and then you mentioned that the upright bass was kind of a part of your concert band in school. Was there something particular that kind of drove you towards the stand or upright bass, or was it kind of just they were like, oh well, we need somebody in this position, so you're going to do it?
The second one.
Okay.
So the local violin shop came in to measure everybody for instruments, and most of the kids joining the orchestra, because I went through a K to 12 school that was really small in rural Ohio. So most of the kids playing in the orchestra were like 2nd and 3rd grade, and they all wanted to play violin. So I had actually wanted to play violin, and the person that was there measuring for instruments, he's like, "You're the perfect size to play upright bass, and there aren't any. So let's get you that instead." And I was like, "Okay, sure." And
Okay.
that was not as inspiring.
That's still cool though, upright bass, and it transitioned into playing bass, so that's a nice pathway.
Well, it's still upright bass. That's my main instrument. I play in symphony and I play jazz. I play
Okay,
upright.
okay, gotcha,
Yeah, yeah.
gotcha. I made the connection there because you mentioned that you also learned guitar, and so I kind of just
Yeah.
made the connection on my
Sorry.
own. No, that's fine. So tell me about how that transitioned out of school. You mentioned that at some point you did go to college for music, and then also at some point I assume that you got like a teaching degree for music because you mentioned that you're teaching music. How have you kept music as an active part of your life outside of what I'm going to call a regular career?
Sure. I didn't actually go to school for education. I went to school for jazz studies and music business. And my goal was to open my own rock school when I graduated. And then I went to grad school for jazz performance after that in New York. And when I left New York and moved down to Florida, where I'm at currently, then I went into alternative certification to get my license for teaching. And I mean, I wanted to perform like full time. That's what I wanted to do, but the gigs just weren't out there for me. So I needed something to supplement my income. And so I got into teaching. I had been teaching privately and then also doing an after school program when I was in New York. Um, so that's kind of what led me to the pathway of education. But I teach music full time. So it's a pretty active part of my life in my regular job. And then in addition to that, my students participate in my after school stuff. Like I get them gigs outside of school that they get paid for. So I'm kind of like their manager for their bands. And then I also, write my own stuff. I have connections with other schools and universities, so I can go record there and do some stuff with them there and collaborate. I mean, I play with the symphony.
Well, so before we start talking about like the playing with the symphony, tell me about the nonprofit that you started.
Sure. So along with my goal that I had when I was an undergrad of starting my own rock school, I started my own nonprofit because I teach rock band at my school that I teach at currently. And I had noticed that there weren't many performances, like performance showcases for my students to participate in at the high school level. Like when you become an adult, all of the gigs are like top 40s, rock, tribute kind of stuff. But when they're kids in middle and high school, it's all marching band, concert band, and orchestra, which is fine. But I felt that there should be equal opportunity for all of the students participating in multiple programs. So I had started it with a battle of the bands in my county through my school, partnering with another school that was nearby. And then the second year we had it, we branched out and included some other schools. And I saw that there was a huge demand for it. We had 13 bands just between three schools participating in middle and high school. I had seen that the Educator Association for Florida, FMEA, had also started to include modern music in their all-state programming and thought that we needed more showcases to see what these kids are doing because they're insanely talented. So I started putting on youth festivals, and I created the nonprofit around offering performance showcases, career development and opportunities for those kids, as well as giving kids who might not be able to afford instruments and coaching, getting them free instruments and free coaching sessions to help them improve on their musicianship.
Awesome. That's very cool. So tell me about how you got into the symphony. Was it just kind of a natural progression playing upright bass? That's where you were going to lead to eventually anyway? Or was that kind of like an intentional goal that you sought out?
I'm not sure if it was intentional. I played like with a couple different groups in New York that were classical oriented. I was I guess technically a double major because my undergrad didn't have an official jazz program. That's why it was jazz studies and not jazz performance. So I took jazz lessons and I took classical lessons, and I was in jazz band and I was in orchestra when I was an undergrad. So I always was doing both. And that was one thing when I was auditioning for grad school that the bass teachers in my grad school had told me set me apart was that I was really good at playing both styles of music. And that was really important to keep both under my fingers because it's not enough to be a one-trick pony anymore. You have to have lots of hyphens in your name along with your title. So I just kept going with it, I guess, because out of practice from doing it at undergrad. And I enjoy playing with the symphony. I like playing with big groups and creating music. And it's a local symphony, but we do get paid, so it's not volunteer. So it's a career opportunity for me, and we get to explore a lot of new music. We do contemporary music. We have local composers who come in and write for us. So it's a lot of fun to explore that new stuff.
Yeah, that's great. So you're not just kind of rehashing all of the old pieces. You're working with like new composers to work on like what people are coming up with. I forget what the name of they call it these days, but like the new pieces that people are creating now versus, the pieces of old.
Yeah, we do original compositions. We do contemporary classical music. We do like some neoclassical stuff. So it sounds like it was written in the 1700s, but it was actually written in like, 1950.
Yeah. That's the term I was missing. Yeah.
Yeah, we do all kinds of stuff. One of my favorite composers that's a more modern composer is Ton Dunn, and we've done pieces by him the last two seasons that we've had, which is really cool because he also uses like sound effects, and he also integrated technology into one of his pieces that we did, which I think is really important as a musician is to continue to innovate and keep up with where technology is going and include it in your music.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So, what do you kind of see for yourself going forward? Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years?
Um, that's a really good question, and I wish I knew the answer. I mean, I feel like it was easy for me to have goals pre-COVID, and then like COVID kind of destroyed goals for a lot of people because I'm not thinking as much in the future anymore because I'm worried that the future could just be taken away just as easily as it was in 2020. So, I mean, like in the next couple of years, I'm hoping to continue to grow my nonprofit so that we sponsored one student this past year for a new studio, for a production studio. Um, and our goal this year is to sponsor 5 students for new instruments, and have 2 showcases and our battle of the bands. And then the next year, we're thinking about expanding down to Miami to include Miami in our festivals. Um, and then from there, like our long term 5 year goal is to have our own office and have our own venue space to host performance showcases and open mics and stuff like that, in like the Kissimmee, Haines City area. For that, so that's for my nonprofit. And then professionally, I'm just hoping that my band stays together and we can continue to play. I've been able to partner with Bach Tower on some new stuff. Like we're creating a Broadway review show for them in March. So I get to have like a full 10-piece band with 3 singers, and we're doing all these Broadway tunes, which is stuff that I really enjoy doing. I like arranging and putting bands together. I like scheduling rehearsals and doing all of that stuff and negotiating contracts and all the business side of things. I like doing that too. So just continuing to do that and build that.
All right. Well, so what are some of your favorite memories that you have through all of this time that keep you motivated to stay on track, helping people out, and doing these festivals?
I really enjoyed. Well, I'll do it from like an educator standpoint and then from a musician standpoint, I guess. So like I've gotten to have my students for 5 years, the graduating class this year. I've had them for 5 years. So I've seen them in 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. And just to see them grow into adulthood and see like where they're going to be taking their lives and then what they're going to be doing with their music. Like I have a student who is currently actually publicly gigging and like going and negotiating his own contracts now and negotiating pay for himself and seeking out gigs on his own. And he's releasing music on Spotify and he's currently planning his own album release party. And I get to be a part of that, which I think is really cool. And those are the kind of moments that I find inspirational. Just watching my students be so dedicated coming from like, I worked at some pretty bad schools before, where they didn't have anything. And then I've gotten to come in and like, we've created this program and we got to have a musical at one of the schools where I was working at, and they had never had a theater performance ever. And the school had been around for over 20 years. And we had our first musical theater performance where we did Beauty and the Beast, and just seeing how much the kids just put their whole selves into it and creating the costumes. And it wasn't so much about like, that was one of the schools that got in fights every single day. And it was more about like what sneakers you had, rather than like actually doing well at academics. So to see them just put themselves full force into that and really wanting to make it something great. And I got to see those students who are now in college. They continue music throughout high school, and some of them are doing it in college now because we got to do stuff like that. So that kind of stuff is very inspiring, for me personally. And then as a musician, I think one of my most inspiring moments that happened recently is that I wrote a piece of music, and a lot of my music's a little hard to listen to, quote unquote, but I've written some more listenable pieces recently. And I had one of the pieces that we performed at one of our restaurant gigs. And usually we don't play original music there. It's just standards that everybody knows kind of thing. So I was like, let's put this in so we can practice it for our recording coming up. And then a fan came the next week and requested that song. So that was really cool because they requested to hear my original music again. So that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's great. So where can people follow you and come and check you out when you're playing and check out the festivals you're doing?
So I'm pretty active on social media. I'm on Facebook under Holly Cordero. You can find me on Instagram at Holly Plays Bass. And then Threads and TikTok are the same handles. I do have a separate Facebook and Instagram for my nonprofit. Facebook is just Cordero Music. And then for Instagram, it's at Cordero Music FL. And then I have YouTube, which is also at Holly Plays Bass for my YouTube channel. We don't have a regular spot where we play right now, but if they follow us on Facebook, they can get the calendar from there. And I post often when we're going to be playing.
So I always like to give the person I'm interviewing the opportunity to put out their last words. So what's a message that you have that you want to share with other people?
I guess one thing that I've always thought of as a musician is to take the opportunity when it presents itself, because you never know when the opportunity will happen again.